Very good evening. You're watching India Global. I'm Gauri Dwivedi. As always, this is a show that gets you the views, the news and perspectives that matter to viewers around the world. But first up, as always, we get you the top stories. The Ivy League dream for Indian students look more distant than ever before as uncertainty and confusion grows. Trump administration looks to crack down on foreign students. Question remains, will they actually mine social media handles of foreign students? Lakhs of students come out on streets protesting against the Yunus regime. 15 lakh youth are on the streets calling for early elections. Yunus, under tremendous pressure, remains to be seen whether he will finally give in to the popular demand. Congress MP Shashi Tharoor's strong warning to Pakistan that there's been a complete change in paradigm as to how India responds to terror, and says that terrorists have realized that they will have a price to pay, even as his own party members are questioning why Tharoor spoke the way he did. Shocking news coming in from Iran, where 3 Indians are reported missing. India urges Iran to urgently trace and ensure the safety of 3 of its nationals. Well, another big disappointment and failure for Elon Musk as its Starship fumbles for the 3rd flight in a row. SpaceX Starship rocket explodes during test flight. This comes just days after Elon Musk said that his companies need his attention 24/7. Viewers, with their dreams being put on hold, Harvard's Indian students are caught in a limbo after America's oldest university has lost its visa rights. Harvard, in fact, has been revered by generations and is now reeling under political fire. At the heart of this crisis are the dreams of hundreds of thousands of Indian students. That's right, viewers. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security has stripped Harvard of its SEVP certification, essentially barring it from enrolling international students for the current academic year. But this is not just about Harvard. This is far bigger than that. There are 6 lakh Indian students who apply for F1 visas. All of them are not going to Harvard. There are 3.3 lakh of them which are currently studying in the US. The growing perception that is there in the US right now is under Trump administration that foreign students are not welcome. International students, they may be contributing to the American economy, but still the numbers don't seem to add up when it comes to the Trump administration. Their futures hang by a thread. For many, this journey starts with sleepless nights and tight budgets. 30,000 rupees for service fees, 15,800 for the DS-160. Endless interviews, stress and sacrifice. We're talking about one specific case, but there are many such. And remember, in the last 24 hours, there have been conflicting reports, but very disturbing ones that indicate that there could be a complete pause on all visas that may be granted to foreign students. And that, of course, is, as I said, conflicting reports, but extremely important because India does send a very large number of them. The rules have turned ruthless. In fact, in one particular case, if your visa is at risk, well, then you speak against America. Online deportation looms. The cost of free speech, well, everything. For perspective, let's take into account how much an international student actually pays to study at NYU. I'm just putting out one case study for our viewers to understand the scale at which international students, including those from India, contribute to the American economy. And look what they're getting in return. They're getting uncertainty, confusion and a complete lack of idea as to whether their future is secured or not. On your screens are some of those numbers. The amount of money that they pay to study, how much of it is non-refundable, how much of it is in phases, and all of it, of course, I wouldn't say it's down the road because, as I said, some reports are conflicting, but it does add to confusion. It does add to the kind of uncertainty that's looming. And on that note, in fact, I want to quickly put forth some of the big questions that we are asking on this debate when it comes to about whether Ivy League is now all about shattered dreams, delayed visas, and visa disappointments? I'm going to put that out for our viewers. Is the Trump administration, that's the first key question, is the Trump administration actually killing the American dream? It looks like that because there are, as I said, serious concerns regarding it. Next up, will social timelines actually now be scanned before academic transcripts? There are some reports that indicate it may be so. If that is the case, then look at where all the resources are actually going. They're not going into finding the top talent, they are going towards actually mining social media handles. Can America be made great without skilled Indian professionals? Simple question. At the end of the day, look at the number of American CEOs powering, the Indian American CEOs that are powering the American economy. Is this the end of the Ivy League dominance? And lastly, what recourse do Indian students have if their visas are denied? They're admitted, accepted in terms of their admission formalities completed, visa formalities not. Where do they stand? What is their recourse? To answer that, let me quickly now get in Aditya Surti, who is an immigration attorney, joining us live from the US to talk more about how things are likely to unfold. Do we have Aditya join us? Okay, let's quickly get him. Okay. Aditya, good to have you on the show. Thank you so much for taking out the time to speak to NDTV. Let me start by asking you that while there is no official word on whether there is a pause on student visas by the American administration, there are reports indicating some of it, but it has added to another level of and a layer of complexity and uncertainty for students, isn't it? What should their recourse really be in times of such great anxiety and insecurity?
Okay, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure that I'm here on this platform. Well, let me make a couple of quick comments before I respond to that question. The first issue is that you have to understand the background of where the Trump administration's current policy as it relates to student visa revocation stemmed from. So the background of all this is laid in the 1952 law that basically says that the Secretary of State has broad discretionary powers to revoke student visas if they feel that the issuance of student visa is contrary to national policy interests. Now, what the current administration has done is that it has used this law to randomly and rampantly revoke student visas. There are two particular categories of student visas that we have observed which are being revoked. One is the pro-Palestinian advocacy group, students who are involved in protests across the country, which this administration deems is adverse to its national policy interests. So those students are at the risk of losing their visas or getting their visas revoked. And the second category of students are those students who have some kind of a minor criminal infraction on the record. And we are talking about infractions. We are not talking about like actual crimes. So even if a particular student may have an infraction as minuscule as a traffic violation, then that student is facing a problem. What we as legal practitioners have been actively doing is filing lawsuits across the country, seeking injunctions against the revocation of these visas. And the other alternative is to procure the student status by filing reinstatement applications. Now, reinstatement of student visa applications take a while, but courts across the country are favorably issuing restraints against the revocation of these visas.
So in fact, Aditya, one Indian American student did win recently. She won a legal reprieve against one such diktat that was passed against her for a traffic violation, in fact. But I want to come to the other aspect, reports that are coming in, very disturbing set of reports indicating that a possibly very extreme situation where social media profiles of students could actually be mined before deciding whether or not visa should be granted to them, even though they qualify on all academic credentials. That's disturbing.
That is true. So they have started implementing all kinds of policies, including but not limited to having access to their social media accounts at the port of entry. When students arrive in the US after procuring the visa, they are looking into their WhatsApp profiles, their email profile, their the email histories, so on and so forth. The real problem here is that students who may have a pre-intended plan of action to settle in the US. So you have to understand that a student visa is not a dual intent visa. It is a single intent visa, which means that your intention of procuring the visa is to come to the US, finish your studies, and go back to your home country. If there is any conversation that they see or any material that they see on social media posts or WhatsApp messages, which leads them to believe that the intention of the student is to permanently settle down in the US, then that's a red flag. So students have to be extremely careful about not having participated in a course of communication that leads a third party to believe that their overall intent is to settle in the US. I'll give you an example. We had a situation recently in which a student, after procuring the student visa, comes to the port of entry here in the US, flies to the US, and then when accessed, there are conversations between her and her boyfriend, who is a US citizen, that look, once you land in the US, we're going to change your status from a student status to a green card applicant, and move on. So that resulted in her getting deported from the airport because her intention was not to just use the student visa to study here, but her intention was to use it to permanently settle down in the US. So those are the kind of conversations that can put you in trouble. Also, students have to understand that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Aditya, yeah, that's a red flag that you raised. But in terms of advice to students who are stuck in a situation, whether like Harvard, in a situation where they don't know, do they have enough time to go to another program? 15 days is actually a very short period of time, especially at a time when all programs have actually closed in on admissions, or students who are actually stuck in a situation where they've been accepted for a program but visas have been rejected. What advice would you like to give to them, specific advice, word of caution that could actually help them sail through these very uncertain times?
Okay, so there are two pieces of information which I would like to share. One is that Harvard did win the lawsuit, right? As yesterday, a motion was granted by the district court in Massachusetts, which allowed Harvard to continue granting SEVIS approvals to its students. So Harvard did win this lawsuit. Secondly, students have to be cognizant of the fact that if they are coming to the US under the current administration to pursue an education, they are taking certain risks. And the biggest risk that they are taking is being at the mercy of the university's support. See, Harvard won the lawsuit because Harvard in itself initiated. It's an educational body that is so strong and that is so well grounded within the American educational system that it initiated this lawsuit. If you enroll in a university that does not have that support, then you should not waste your funds after getting enrolled in that university. You would rather go to a university that's going to back you up. I'm sure Harvard did not charge thousands of dollars from these students to participate in this litigation. It did it on its own initiative. Harvard hired its own lawyers to file this lawsuit, and it won on behalf of its students. That's the strength of the university.
That's a very important point you're making, but also limiting, because while Ivy League is an aspiration, a lot of Indian students aspire to be at the Ivy League campuses, at the Ivy League colleges, but several of them don't make it there, right? Which is when they look at probably rung below or two rungs below, because they still want to pursue their international education dreams in America. And what you're saying is that if an university is not powerful enough to take on the administration, do not try your luck there. That's essentially what you are saying, which brings me to ask you, yeah, go ahead, finish your point, sir.
Yeah, that is one aspect of what I'm saying. The other aspect that I want to also share is that I agree with you that not everyone can get into an Ivy League. I get it. But students can get into a second tier or third tier university. The message I'm trying to convey is that avoid sham colleges. Some of the students do get into trouble because the colleges are quote unquote accredited, but they are not to the mark of where they should be. And they are primarily in the business of making money by harboring international students. So students should try to avoid those kind of universities. That's what I'm trying to convey.
All right, very quickly, sir, before I wrap this up, which is that how much of some of the reports that are coming in about a pause in issuance of visas or the fact that social media profiles will be mined, how much of this do you think will actually stand in a court of law in the US, since everything that the Trump administration is taking in terms of decisions is being challenged legally?
I think at the end of the day, the Constitution of the United States is the most powerful authority, and it will stand the test of time because the principles that are grounded in the Constitution, such as due process and First Amendment, will at any given time prevail. We have seen this historically, whether it is, um, during the Second World War, even during the Vietnam War. I mean, again, you have to look at the situation in the context of the times that we are in. And I firmly believe that the Constitution of this country is so powerful that it will help individuals like these students who are stuck in this mess
Okay.
to prevail through proper legal channels.
All right, Aditya, I'll leave it there. Thank you so much for joining me and really explaining in detail, advising and cautioning several of those students who are caught in the crossfire of Trump's crackdown. On that note, we slip into a very short break. We come back and continue this discussion because, as I said, there are many legs to this story. Thousands of students and families are facing uncertain future. We come back and continue this discussion. Stay with us. Viewers, we come back to discuss one of the biggest stories, which is the Ivy League dreams of thousands of Indian students, which are now facing visa nightmares. In a surprising turn, Indian students who are planning to begin their studies could also be caught in this crossfire. Western media claims that all student visa interviews have been paused. The American Embassy in India says that isn't the case, but the fact remains that there could be serious mining of social media profiles of students. And in fact, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, there are reports indicating that he has effectively pressed the pause button on new visa interviews. Now, how is that going to shape up for students who are caught in the limbo, the uncertainty that exists for them? Remember, it's not just paperwork that's under review, it's also profiles that are under review. And these new rules will make discretion really the big word, where every visa officer will decide whether or not to grant that visa. Now, how this shapes up for students, what is the kind of impact? I want to get into important voices to discuss this in greater detail. Michael Wildis, who is an immigration lawyer and managing partner, joins me live, along with Mr. Naveen Chopra, who's founder chairman of the Chopra Group, company that actually advises a lot of students to actually go outside. And in fact, Mr. Chopra, let me start with you. As things stand right now, you advise a lot of students to evaluate opportunities in the US. A report like this, a policy decision like this, is bound to put thousands of students and their careers at risk. No visas being granted.
Well, I mean, this is true partly because most Indian students, when they're applying to any destination, including to the United States, will have some fallback option in terms of applying to a couple of universities in maybe one or even two additional countries. There have been many changes to student visa regimes by the UK, by Australia, now the United States. So Indian students are always playing some sort of a percentage game. Now, the United States is by far the favored destination because of the education system, first. Secondly, the US is the dream. It has been the dream for the last 200 years, which is why millions of people from all over the world migrated to the United States. Some by, of course, some by as victim of forced circumstance, but eventually, when they settled there, they contributed to the American economy and the American way, the American music, the American everything. So America is a country of immigrants. Now, the on the ground reality which exists in the United States, but and indeed in most Western countries, is one of low or negative population growth, aging populations, a large amount of demand for talent in key sectors.
But those are big picture questions, all of them valid. But at the end of the day, for a student or her family facing the prospect of not getting a visa despite getting admission could be heartbreaking.
It is, but I will tell you that a very large percentage of them will just switch and go off to Australia or to England or Ireland or Germany or France or Netherlands or Italy
Okay.
or yeah.
Okay. Michael, come in there. How do you see the impact there at a time when locally the mood is now moving away from just a crackdown on illegal immigrants to legal immigrants? That's what it's turning out to be, isn't it?
Well, first, thank you for having me. My name is actually Michael Wilds. I'm a second-generation immigration lawyer. My father, my late father, Leon Wilds, actually wrote for a magazine called India Today on a weekly basis in the 1970s and 1980s.
Okay.
We're still on 53rd and Madison in Manhattan. Look, I'm a former federal prosecutor. I used to deport bad people. And then I joined my dad's practice, and my son is in the firm now, and we help people get visas, green card, citizenship. And we see this as an impactful time, particularly for the Indian community, where it's not only the hub of the tech part of our academia, but it invades everything from the STEM, the science, technology, engineering, math, and the creative, because the underpinnings of every field are heartfelt from the Indian community. But let's pull the lens back if we can. And again, this former federal prosecutor, and I teach in a law school, is going to give you a little information. I think that will be impactful. Harvard is not doing enough against anti-Semitism. And the president is pushing pressure points to make sure they do something. Now, your viewership may not know this, but everybody's emails and social media is being taken anyway from the State Department when you make visa applications. So they have the information. And they're pushing buttons, as the last speaker that you had on, that are proper. A F1 student visa is not a dual intent visa. Therefore, if you're going to cause harm, that we're not talking about publishing your opinion. You're allowed to have an opinion for or against anything you want, but you're not allowed to stop Jewish students from going into school.
Absolutely.
You're
There's no
not allowed-
debate there, sir. There's no debate, which brings me to ask you quickly that
Sure.
while Harvard may not be doing enough to crack down on anti-Semitism, it's the students, like thousands of Indian students, who are caught in the crossfire. They didn't do any of
Right, but
this, but they are the ones bearing the brunt.
I agree, but it's unfortunate, and it is a pressure point, because the F1 student visa is in the weakest station of the lexicon of visas, and it's up to the Indian community to find other schools that do not have this kind of experience, to either change their status if they're caught in the crosshairs, as you indicated, or for other impending students that want to come, to go to schools that permit proper discourse for all students. This is not an entitlement to get a student visa. And
Indeed.
It's not unfortunate just for the Indian community, it's unfortunate for the world around us. And the shame of all of this is that these are the buttons left to the president to have to push
Right.
in an area of academia. And let's not forget, these students need to find a way to onboard into
Absolutely.
the workforce. And it is an important community to at least enfranchise and educate how they can navigate around these
Absolutely.
times.
All right, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much, gentlemen, because this is a story that I'm going to keep coming back to, simply because it impacts thousands of students and their families. Thank you so much for joining me today on India Global. On that note, viewers, it's time to slip into a very short break. We come back with lots more on the other side. Stay with us. Viewers, in just 48 hours, Bangladesh has gone from being tense to being on the edge. Mohammed Yunus-led interim government is facing a full-blown crisis and possibly even a national revolt. 2 secretariat lockdowns. University teachers have put down their pens. Bureaucracy is boiling. National teachers have also joined the protest. Factories are bleeding and the economy is teetering on collapse. In fact, all this as 1.5 million protesters have been on the streets protesting. against Mohammed Yunus. Led by the youth wings of BNP, they flooded the streets, and their chant is very simple, that they want elections to be held as promised. In fact, BNP has been leading this charge against Mohammed Yunus, demanding elections to be held at the earliest. In fact, all this while, Mohammed Yunus is not in Bangladesh, he's actually in Japan. Now, there's an earthquake of dissent that he faces. Youth are on fire, demanding, as I said, accountability and an end to the authoritarian experiments. And which is why we ask that it is now youth versus Yunus that is unfolding in Bangladesh for a variety of reasons. They want jobs, they want reforms, all of which that they had been promised, but none of which has been delivered by Yunus. Which is why the big questions that we ask on India Global, as always, that in this showdown between the youth and Mohammed Yunus, what will be, who really stands with Mohammed Yunus at a time like this? Next up, can Yunus actually understand, comprehend the demands made by the youth? The reason for that is that there could be a disconnect. He's an 84-year-old man, and then there are these youngsters who are seeking change. Next up, can Yunus really ignore the clarion call that is being made for elections? It's not a call just by BNP, it's a call by the army, it's a call by student leaders, it's a call across the board. How long will he resist that pressure? And lastly, as chaos erupts, where exactly is Yunus? Why isn't he right now in Bangladesh trying to address the friction that is coming to fore? And he is in Japan. Before I open this up for the guests, I want to quickly first play out this ground report that we have for you from Dhaka, from ground zero, to really understand how things are unfolding on the streets of Bangladesh. Batin Biplab, who joins us and gives this report from Dhaka to tell us what really is unfolding in Bangladesh. Listen in.
From the capital of Bangladesh, Dhaka, and it's the biggest rally for establishing youth political right by Bangladesh Nationalist Party and three bodies of this party, Jubadol, Shetsashavak Dol, and Chhatradol. They already gathered in front of their central office and And if I want to show you the rally, you just see the huge number of activists of Bangladesh Nationalist Party. They mostly from Jubadol, Chhatradol, and Shetsashavak Dol. They already gathered in front of their office. And the political leaders of Bangladesh Nationalist Party said to us that they want to establish the rights of the youth. And, the acting chairperson, Tariq Rahman, addressed to scheduled to address the chief guest in this procession. And, we will join virtually, and the leaders of Bangladesh Nationalist Party, Khandakar Musharraf Hussain, and they are also standing committee member, Khandakar Musharraf Hussain, Abdul Moin Khan, Amir Khusru Mahmud Chaudhry, and Salahuddin Ahmed. Four leaders already gathered in front of this the stage. Already you see the stage set up in front of BNP central office, and a huge number of activists from different districts of Bangladesh. In this youth political rights rally, not only Dhaka supporter, beside Dhaka, there are 4 district supporters gathered here, like Sylhet, Madaripur, Faridpur, and Bamban-Singh. And this is the end of the planning of BNP.
All right, Faisal Mahmood and Padma Raj joined me to talk more on what is unfolding right now in Bangladesh. We played out that report where we saw just streets and streets of people trying to now comprehend that how long are they going to put up with what's happening, given that they were promised change. Faisal, let me start by asking you, as things stand right now, Mohammed Yunus is facing pressure from multiple fronts, isn't he? Whether it's the teachers, whether it's the bureaucracy, whether it's the youth who are on the streets, or whether it's the political party, the only one that is allowed to actually contest the election, BNP. All of them are up in arms because they feel that what they were promised hasn't been delivered. How do you see the situation right now on ground, and what do you think is the reason why people are on the streets?
Thank you, Gauri. Yes, situation is a bit tense out there because, as you mentioned, like the largest political party, Bangladesh Nationalist Party, they demand an election, like an exact election date, and they're showing their organizational power on the streets of Dhaka because they have mustered this huge, large crowd in the center of Dhaka to place just one demand, like declare an election date. That's their basic demand. But what Dr. Yunus has tried. If I have to borrow the word from the Game of Thrones, he just wanted to break the wheels, and that's not an easy job. He wanted to bring a lot of changes in the bureaucracy in other places as well, in the administration, in the whole process. And there is resistance from every quarters because people want this status quo to be maintained because they don't want these systems to be changed. And Dr. Yunus, before declaring an election, he wants this change to take place because he believes that if there is a status quo and an election will take place, then nothing will actually change. So that's why there's sort of like a standoff. But again, Dr. Yunus has declared that the election will take place between January and January and June. So there's a 6-month gap. But the political parties led by BNP, they are not convinced. They want an exact election date. And there is the actual standoff because without an exact election date, they're sort of like they're feeling agitated, because in the past 1 decade, there was no proper election. And BNP is sort of like scared that when will the next real election will take place. So that's why they're agitated.
Okay, so that seems to be a very simplified explanation to a complex problem. One is, of course, pressure from BNP, which played a very important role in the churn that actually led to Mohammad Yunus coming to power. But Padma Rao, comment there in terms of how things are unfolding in Bangladesh. Pressure points are multiple, and let's take those visuals. Let's play that out once for our viewers. In terms of even if you say 1.5 million people on streets, maybe an exaggerated number, but it still indicates the extent to which people are unhappy with Mohammad Yunus and the promises he made.
Thank you, Gauri. Thank you for having me. I'm sorry if you hear a beep, but I don't have electricity where I am. I agree with Faisal, that these are primarily 3 groups that are close to the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, which hopes to win an election because it's been out of power for very long. Sheikh Hasina has been sort of prominent in rule and she was driven out of the country. Now, it's important to remember, who are, when we say that these are students' groups, let's not forget that it was a students' group movement primarily that propelled Mohammad Yunus to the role of interim advisor to start with. So now what happened to those students? Now those students are now a political movement, a fledgling political movement called the National Citizens Party of Bangladesh, or National Citizens Movement. And that is, those are the people who wanted him to be the interim advisor. So my personal reading of this delay in the elections is because, they are a fledgling movement. If elections were to be announced in December, then they would not be able to consolidate themselves as a political organization vis-a-vis, the huge BNP, and of course the Awami League is out of the picture now. So I think that what they're trying to do is buy time to, hold the elections and also be able to hopefully compete in those elections, and perhaps, who knows, even with Professor Mohammad Yunus as their candidate. So I think that is what is happening, but I would really be interested in knowing, perhaps Faisal could enlighten us on who exactly are these groups, Faisal. When we say students, yes, there are a lot of civil rights activists, there are a lot of lawyers, there's certainly a lot of stuff that has gone wrong in Bangladesh. The elections were not announced within 6 months of Professor Yunus taking over in August last year. So if he now pushes it forward to January to June.
In fact, there's a statement that's coming from Mohammad Yunus, who is in Japan right now, and he has in fact said that general election will be held in Bangladesh by June next year under any circumstances.
Yes,
that's what he has said.
That's what I'm referring to, Gauri.
Yeah, and in the backdrop of that, it is unclear as to whether he's actually responding to the pressure that's happening on ground or not. But Faisal, respond to... Yeah, no, you've been speaking, but yeah, 10 seconds, yeah.
If I may just finish, please. I just wanted to say that if he is serious about holding elections, January to June is too vague a period. Perhaps it might help if he were actually to name a date, because I think that is what the BNP is waiting for. And when we say students groups on the streets, then I'd really like to know, I'd be interested in knowing the exact composition of these students groups.
Okay, Faisal, respond to that very quickly. Which are
Yeah.
these students? Which are these students?
These are the youth wings of BNP. You know, Shabak Dal, Jubo Dal,
Exactly.
these are like the youth wings of BNP. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to leave
Yeah.
it there. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining me. As far as how Bangladesh is unfolding, well, viewers, bottom line really is that while Bangladesh remains on the edge, Mohammed Yunus has booked a window seat to Tokyo. Yes, when teachers strike, civil servants revolt, and 1.5 million protesters flood Dhaka, the interim Prime Minister decided it's the perfect time for cherry blossoms. Mohammed Yunus, remember, is caught between competing demands for reform and elections. He promised both of these when he came to power last year. But it's the youth of Bangladesh that feel most shortchanged. Remember, Yunus came to power ostensibly riding a student revolution, and with no change on ground, a worsening economy, which has led to shrinking opportunities, the youth of Bangladesh are demanding answers. And in fact, with an impending showdown with the army, Mohammed Yunus is running out of time, or at least that's what it seems. And while there is still no clarity as far as when that election schedule will be announced, saying it would be as early as June next year will hardly assuage any of the frayed nerves. The reason why people are on ground is because they need answers. Vague references will not satisfy them. On that note, a quick break. We come back with more stories on the other side. Terror will be met with a price. Those were the thunderous words that came in from Congress MP Shashi Tharoor, and this time the world heard them loud and clear in Panama City in a fiery address soaked with grief and fury. In fact, Shashi Tharoor slammed Pakistan in no uncertain terms for decades of exporting terror. From Mumbai to Pulwama and now to the blood-soaked soil of Pahalgam. We've mourned, we've pleaded, no more, India has acted. That's what Shashi Tharoor said, citing bold strikes across the line of control and deep inside Pakistan's heartland. Pakistan's terror factories are no secret. Even Western agencies had real-time intel during 26/11, yet not a single mastermind behind the massacre had faced justice. From Kashmir to Kansas, the blood trail leads back to Rawalpindi, and now India's message is crystal clear. The sindoor on our women's foreheads will match the blood of the killers. The world must choose complicity or consequence, because India will not suffer in silence. And Panama responded with support, saying it stands with India in the fight against terrorism. I want to first play out this soundbite of Shashi Tharoor, and then we, of course, move on to the fact that nothing in India happens without politics of it, including what Shashi Tharoor said when he slammed Pakistan.
And let me say to you, this is going to be the new normal. Our Prime Minister has made it very clear. Operation Sindoor was necessary because these terrorists came and wiped the sindoor off the foreheads of 26 women by depriving them of their husbands and their married lives. In fact, there were some women who cried out, "The terrorists kill me too." And they said, "No, go back, tell what happened to you." We heard their cries, and India decided that the color of the sindoor, that vermilion color on the forehead of our women, will also match the color of the blood of the killers, the perpetrators, the attackers.
That was Shashi Tharoor, part of the global diplomatic outreach of India, where it's telling all important 32 countries around the world why India acted, why Operation Sindoor happened, because there was a Pahalgam terror attack. And as Shashi Tharoor spoke, He won applause, he won solidarity and unity from several of these countries where he visited. He also got brickbats from his party. The Congress, in fact, hit back saying that Shashi Tharoor seems to be speaking from the same sheet as BJP spokespersons. As I said, viewers, there's politics over this as well, and that's exactly what happened. Udit Raj, the man you are seeing on the other end of the screen, spoke against these comments, saying that Shashi Tharoor doesn't speak like an Indian member of parliament, but more like BJP spokesperson. Listen in.
शशि थरूर जी बीजेपी के सुपर प्रवक्ता हैं जो बीजेपी के लोग नहीं कह पा रहे हैं। मोदी जी की चमचागिरी या मोदी जी का गुणगान जितना वो नहीं कर पा रहे हैं और बीजेपी के लोग उससे ज़्यादा शशि थरूर कर रहे हैं। शशि थरूर को पता है कि पहले की सरकारों ने क्या किया। पहले की सरकारें ढोल नहीं पीटती थी। सेना की कार्रवाई का लाभ लेने के लिए कांग्रेस पार्टी उसको पब्लिक डिक्लेयर नहीं करती थी।
The spotlight is now on securing an interim trade arrangement between India and the US before finalizing the first phase of their bilateral trade pact. Source-based information seems to suggest that both sides are aiming to reach some sort of a broad trade framework by the 25th of June, ahead of the 9th of July deadline, when the US may reinstate a 26% reciprocal tariff on Indian goods. That tariff, imposed on 2nd of April, is currently suspended. Until then, Indian exports continue to face a standard 10% baseline tariff. Now, the urgency reflects both countries' intent to avoid renewed trade friction, keep up the momentum under the India-US Compact framework, which focuses on advanced technology and several other aspects. How soon can that happen? What will be the shape of this? And why this has larger ramifications? Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri is in the US, and to decode all that, my colleague Mohammad Ghazali joins me on the show. Now, Ghazali, this is an important meeting that's taking place. We spoke about it yesterday in terms of the expectations of it. Some positive developments and reports indicate that maybe more than incremental progress has been made. Talk to us. What are your sources telling you?
See, there is a timeline of the events which are happening. Like last week only, the Special Secretary of Commerce Ministry, Mr. Rajesh Kumar, who is also the chief negotiator, he concluded his visit to United States after negotiating with his counterparts in the US Trade Department. We also know Piyush Goyal, the Union Commerce Minister, he had paid a few visits to United States. Also, Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman also visited US this year after Prime Minister Modi's visit in Feb earlier this year. So, all these ministers, all these chief negotiators from the Commerce and Finance Ministries are visiting and negotiating with their US counterpart for a bilateral trade agreement. But what is the recent development is that India and US are looking forward for an expected interim trade agreement between the two countries by 25th of June, because we know that 26% reciprocal tariff which US had imposed has been paused till 9th of July, and after that perhaps it will kick in again. But before that, interim agreement will give a blueprint of what the final BTA between India and US could look like. And we are also learning that a team of US experts or diplomats related to the commerce sector, the Commerce Ministry there, they are also expected to visit India, and this progress of discussions will move forward once they visit India and meet their counterparts in Delhi.
All right, Mohammad Ghazali, we'll leave it there. Thanks much for speaking to us. Well, viewers, at the end of the day, it's important to point out that Misri's meetings are a follow-up. In fact, he also met US Undersecretary Jeffrey Kessler to explore new opportunities under the India-US Compact Initiative, which was launched during Prime Minister Modi's visit to the US earlier this year. And these meetings are seen as a follow-up to the momentum that both sides have been able to break and build in terms of the trade opportunities that they have identified. All right, shifting focus now to SpaceX. Well, it launched Starship on its ninth test flight, a crucial test mission after two previous failures. The flight, in fact, started smoothly, but Starship encountered some issues in orbit. The first stage Super Heavy booster exploded shortly before its expected splashdown, and fuel leaks on the upper stage vehicle caused it to spin uncontrollably before its planned re-entry through Earth's atmosphere. Now, this comes at a time when Elon Musk has made announcements that his companies need him back 24/7. There have also been comments that he made about a month back that he would now be going back from Doge to his companies. So he wants to go back to running his companies, but at this stage there are back-to-back failures that he needs to address. Maybe he needs to spend even more time on his companies and less on any other political agenda that may have occupied his mind earlier. All right, on that note, completely timed out of this edition of India Global. Thanks so very much for watching.